I'm just going to make this video to talk about grassroots initiatives I was going to last night that are standing in the way of Saudi government stopping necessary to implement Brexit and put things in place. Seeing themselves as someone who stands in the way of progress and making sure that everything the government try and do is impossible to do, even though we had a clear majority in the last election, overwhelmingly in favour of Brexit. Okay, putting that behind us, what is the alternative? What are we going to do now we've got Brexit? How are we going to make it work? And this is really the main point and the most important thing to talk about on this subject. Now, firstly, Brexit is something that has been voted for, it's been implemented, and the government and the country have put it in place. And by voting overwhelmingly for the Conservative government who are in favour of Brexit in the last elections, it is clear that this is not now going to be overturned. We are not going to have this overturned, and it wouldn't be British. And I don't think the British people would stand for it, even if they voted against Brexit in the first place, like a lot of the people who voted for the Tory government in the last referendum, last election did. So actually, what we've got to start doing is looking at ways of building up the system and helping the country recover from the situation of COVID-19, which is the most important issue and something which I intended to address last night, but I got a little bit carried away. So the first issue is how do we implement a system whereby we can still integrate our good business relationships with Europe and the rest of the world um, with, with the existing system, the European Union, so staunchly, certainly the French and sometimes the Germans, so staunchly against Brexit and overwhelmingly trying to condition us and push us down to a level far beneath our natural position that we find a good position that we find ourselves in with Brexit. So the first thing to do is obviously, when dealing with other countries, the European Union and everything else, we've got out of Brexit, all the arguments have been had. We've got to start implementing good relationships with the European Union and the rest of the world at the same time. Possibly not putting the European Union to the back of the queue in terms of favouring Australia all the time. I think Australia has a lot of problems. I think we're seeing a lot of problems in Australia that need to be resolved before we can start doing business properly with them. I think our primary targets should still be the European Union, and we should start to implement a system whereby we have non-governmental facilitation of a process where business can be easily facilitated and set up with the European Union. Now, this means all logistics and everything else that have to be overseen by companies who are trading and exporting goods and receiving goods from the European Union. This firstly means that we have to set up, like I said, non-governmental facilitation for companies employed by the government who are non-governmental to issue a system whereby all the red tape can be taken care of. So the service would be supplied to the country as a whole, and people would be able to opt in for the service and pay a certain amount to have the operation put in place, have all the logistics and red tape and the dogma, but it's taken out of their hands and put in place by someone else, taking the workload and the pressure off these companies individually and offering a system whereby we actually start to continue the good relationship that we already had with the European Union when we're part of it. I'm not saying it's ideal under the European Union, but I'm just saying if we can get it back to the state where business still operates as smoothly as it did in a customs union, in a union that is a political union, sorry, and turn it into something that smooths over the problems to do with the customs issues, customs and excise and everything else, and all the imports, exports, and all the red tape that goes into creating business networks with the European Union. The idea really is just to take the weight off the individual companies, the small companies, the grassroots businesses who can't get off the blocks because the pressure of dealing with imports and exports and everything to do with trade is far too great to actually enable a company to start creating wealth and becoming an enterprise on its own. So this is the first issue. And I think that when I came onto the Reform Party last night, and I talked about the Reform Party. I think certainly if we don't have a political position in the country, party, I think certainly we have the brains and the aptitude for understanding business and those sorts of problems that are thrown at the everyday people much more possibly than politicians. And it's for this reason that, say, we don't actually stand a chance of getting a vote in the next election, or if we do, then we could certainly act as a buffer or a shared status with the leading party, form an alliance or something like that, and create a network where we can start to feed information into the government from our good position that we are in. And enable facilitation to go through the process by using our good business connections and the people who are interested in seeing Brexit become a success, and using these people to employ them and put them first in the queue as well. Because this is, if people are going to stand in the way and complain all the time and put their face in the way of progress and block progress, these people should be put to the back of the queue in terms of who gets employment in the country. I think the most important thing is there are far too many angry voices raised against the government. Okay, this is not how government works. The government are in charge. We put them in charge. The majority put them in charge. If you don't get on and accept that and let them do their job, then they're going to make your lives very difficult. Now, that should be the natural scheme of things. People should be phased out of jobs. Certainly, certain issues to do with the previous government, of the Labour government, certain things I think should go to trial. I think Blair should be put on trial, certainly in an international court. Like I said in one of my other videos, I think he should be put on trial for killing millions of people, basically, and dealing one of the worst atrocities the Middle East has been seen in modern times, and implementing the whole cause and effect of the Arab Spring and Islamic State springing up. So I think this has to be looked at in an international court by people who looked at what this guy did in disbelief, because they couldn't believe that he was getting away with doing this as some kind of demigod in charge of our country. Now, under Blair, they wouldn't take any nonsense from the Conservatives or from people who voted for Conservatives or anyone else. They dogmatically ruled, thinking they knew best, and obviously, as it was seen, they didn't. Now, the Conservatives are much wiser. They have a much more shrewder head on their shoulders. And certainly, with the help of the Reform Party, I think we can start to push through agendas to enhance the system and turn Brexit into a success. For the first reason. And at the same time, we have to start looking for the people who deserve jobs, who put their back into helping the country rather than standing in the way and causing more red tape and standing in the way of progress. We have to stop this getting into the job market, because these people quite clearly are, rocking the boat unnecessarily and causing too much friction in terms of getting on with the country. So, I think it's time we as a nation, as people, as the political classes, start to implement a change whereby, if you give something back, you play by the rules, and you do everything that is wanted of you as a citizen of this country, then fair enough. You can, earn accreditation or get in a situation where you're associated with a system in the country or in the government, or a job or whatever it may be, that befits your capabilities and proves that you're deserving of your status in life. I don't think people should go through life blasé, thinking just because they've had a job for 25 years, where they've got to the top of it, and then they've unnecessarily caused friction or done things within that company to undermine the process of putting Brexit in place. It's been voted for. Okay, we've had all the shouting, the arguments, everything else. I think we just put it in place and get on with it. Otherwise, it could cost you your job, basically. Now, the next problem to face that I'm primarily concerned with, as I was going to talk about mainly, is grassroots initiatives in this country. Now, big business. We know the Labour government, when they get back in, it'll be all the old tactics, kowtowing to America and Biden, and bringing big business back into the foray, and ensuring that everything's sucked up by the government or their cronies or people who pay vast sums of money to the government, all this sort of thing, all the corruption gets in and everything else. We all know about how Labour works. But actually, under the Conservative government, it's a two-tier issue here. It's a two-tier issue because we've got the situation where London is obviously, predominantly anti-Brexit and anti-democracy, as they've proven in their voting tactics. I think it's about time that we start to federalise the country. This is my first issue. I think it's important if we're going to look after grassroots issues and start to rebuild the country and make British strong again, which is what we have to do. Then the first course of action is to spread the load of the financial clout in this country to the far-reaching parts of the whole of the British Isles or the whole of Great Britain. And I think it's important that we start to implement federal taxes. I agree with HS2 in principle. I don't necessarily like the way it's just sort of singled out Manchester as a northern powerhouse. I agree with the infrastructure technologies. I think HS2 should go ahead, but I think the vast majority of the country are still bypassed for certain extent. We focus too much on sort of London, Manchester, and a few other major cities in the country. But actually, what we have to do is start to get a regional system where we can implement our own rules and regulations from our own regional governments. I think that's an important aspect and something to move towards, taking Brexit further and implementing something whereby we can have a system where the money starts to filter down to the grassroots initiatives. So people, will have big businesses that will be able to primarily patronize the local area to gain accreditation from contribution. This is the way it will work. So moving away from high tax, it would be more in line with a contributionist style phenomena where people who have a large amount of revenue from their companies and due to the workforce of a particular area, it should be in their interests to improve schools and hospitals and build up the local area so that they can get feeders for their company and start to implement strategies on a global scale through contributing to their local area and the areas that are affected by their company and the company operates in. Now, that's for the medium to large businesses that will obviously that will affect. But everyone at a certain level needs to contribute to a certain degree. And in this level, we have people who are working from home. Generally, I've talked long lengths about videos quite a long time ago, about a couple of years ago, talking about how if you're starting a startup business, the last thing you should think about is making money straight away. You should start to implement something for the common good and trial it on the local area before it starts coming back to you. I can't say this is a proven, tried and tested way in my situation, but I am getting successful at using the tools and the infrastructure that I'm setting up with my company. And I am starting to generate networks through what I'm doing and starting to get noticed by organizations and companies who are interested in using our technology and the ideas that we're trying to lay out before we start to create any sort of feasible size revenue for ourselves. Now, this is not always going to be possible for people to do. I understand that they can't always have a situation where they're on, permanently giving out and receiving, in terms of, commodities, receiving the returns from it. That okay, it can't always operate like that. But to a certain level, there has to be a certain amount of contribution on your mind when you start to set yourself up as a business in this new directive that we're existing in, because it's a shared community. We're all in the same boat together. We're all trying to get Brexit launched. Like in the cyber world, for example, where you find there's a large amount of collaboration going on in technological systems, a lot of open source technology and that sort of thing, which is the way forward. putting your stuff out there, getting known, getting recognized, getting kudos is equally as important as hoarding money and getting clout for the money that you have in order to implement, you know, a larger company, in order to implement a takeover of a certain area of the country. Now, if you are in the lucky situation where you've got to that stage and you start to make money and you're one of these big corporations, um, then it stands to reason that you should still be trying to nurture the grassroots around you and trying to share, not necessarily patent to such an extent your ideas, without actually sharing some of them to enhance the system around you. This is another way of contributing that I think is definitely the way forward, and the way the tech world works, which is what I work in. But I think, moving aside from that, um, if we can start to structure a plan where grassroots initiatives get looked after and nurtured, then, in an open source community, we can start to generate a network of hubs in the community, that are all able to feed from a sort of uh, a corporate hierarchy that is more in line with filtering down to the grassroots than just trading with other big corporations, which is the reason why we bring in the federalisation idea of Britain, which means that key locations and targets within the United Kingdom will have their own autonomy due to the business hierarchy and structure there. And if that system looks after itself and feeds itself and does the best thing for its own community, then that will bring maximum impact to the at all levels, especially starting the big corporations who contribute the most. They will start to get more kudos and more international recognition for improving an area and having pilot schemes that work better for that community, and prove, um, you know, looking at the whole system, the ecosystem, if you like, that that whole area is a tried and tested example of how the system can benefit a community, and be a pilot system to trial in other locations around the world. We should be at the forefront as Brexiteers, as a Brexit country, of innovation, technology, creativity, and everything else, which we have in spades in this country. There are lots of people who are dying to get their hands on the opportunity to get started, to run their own business, or to help other people set their business up, or to act in a key role, that enables a sort of network of people to join up and link to something that is a shared community purpose. So that's the overall plan, and that's the way it works. Like I said at the beginning, it's a two-tier. It's really like a three-tier. You've got the key aspect, which is the federalisation, or the move towards federalisation, the moving away from an autonomous London and filtering some of the emphasis on other communities in the whole country. The second process is to enable a contribution reward system, where people who start to contribute at all levels get rewards, kudos, and international and public recognition. And the third aspect is to bring in a an open source network where we can link up the hierarchies, and show ourselves as an ecosystems in a federalized concern that are act as an ambassador to the rest of the world, and can start to bring about recognition and kudos for the fact that Brexit has become a success. Thank you very much.